You have always been exactly the right good enough mom for your kids. And today we're going to talk about what our brains did in the first 3 years of our kids' life and why that matters.
Let's keep calm and mother on. Mothering is way too important to do alone and way too serious to be serious all the time. My name is Christy Thomas and I am here shoulder to shoulder with you, mothering and enjoying life together. This is the podcast where you can focus on being mindful and taking a deep breath with me and learning new things so you can pause and savor the amazing life you already have.
Every once in a while, you find a book that you really wish everyone on the whole planet would read. And while this book is for people before birth, like pregnancy and probably birth to age 3, I wish that this book would be read by every human who ever interacts with a child or a person who was formerly a child. So if you can hint, get that right. I think everyone should read this book because it breaks down the idea of why we need nurture, why we need to treat ourselves with compassion and mindfulness and empathy, and how to do it because of our brains, and why to do it because of our brains. There's a lot of talk nowadays about stress levels and trauma, big T and little t, and all those things are important to know about. But this book, The Nurture Revolution by Greer Kirshenbaum, really reinforces the idea of how to take care of your nervous system. And she's writing it at a time to the audience of parents parenting a baby. And if you've done that, you know that that is a high alert time for your nervous system. So this is such a good book for everybody because the unique challenges of sleep deprivation and parenting someone who literally can't tell you what's wrong, you need this book. And I can't wait to talk to Greer about it. I think I'm going to give this to every mom that I know with kids under the age of 3. Like, it's that good, but really everyone needs to either listen to it or read it. I've done both. Okay, there we go. Let's get started with this interview. Okay, I have to say, this is a total fangirl moment. I am so excited to have Greer Kirshenbaum on my podcast. She just wrote the book, The Nurture Revolution. And even though my kids are 17, 15, and 10, I got so much out of this book. And I'm so glad you wrote it. Thank you for writing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy you could see that part as well, because a lot of people ask, is it, what's the age limit? And, that's my answer. It's, aimed for, pregnancy to about age 3.
Right.
But the principles really apply to kids of every age, including adult children.
Right. So when I was telling someone, I was like, well, if you know a child or know someone who was a child, you really should read this book.
Thank you.
Because it's really all about the brain and nervous system regulation, and trying to Google that online gets really confusing really fast.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I took, 15 plus years of reading articles.
Because what is your degree officially in, Greer? You're a Ph.D. of what?
Yes, I have a Ph.D. in medical science and neuroscience.
Wow.
University of Toronto. Yeah, and it was, hundreds of articles that I had read over those many years that I synthesized into a book for parents and professionals, which is tremendous. My uncle asked me recently. He's like, "Wait, did you read all those papers as you're writing the book?" I was like, "I just know them because
they're your oxygen."
Exactly. Yeah.
They're the seed, they're the soil that you've planted your seed in with all these hours and hours and hours. And you are a mom. So not only have you studied all of this, but you've also kind of lived it. Like, you have one lived experience so far with one child, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like my experience being a baby and really contributed, and also prepared me kind of reflecting on having my own child. And yes, absolutely. Having my own child just brought it all to life, right? Like, all those, somatic experiences, emotional experiences were, I was observing all of those.
So let's dig in. We know that babies change so fast, right? From the moment they're born, from the moment we pee on the stick and find out we're pregnant, like they're changing nonstop. But then we don't always consider how our bodies are changing, especially our brains in relationship to relationships. So tell me a little bit about how a baby brain starts, and then we'll talk about the parent brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, the baby's brain starts to develop all throughout pregnancy, right? It is miraculous. You can kind of look into that unbelievably complex. I always think, my husband and I, when we would look at my son, we're like, how did his fingernail develop?
Yeah.
Like, how did that?
There's just so much awe and wonder.
Absolutely. I still feel that, when I look at my son. But the experiences of the baby brain are very integral to its development. So baby brain and body, is always being directed by both genetics and experience. And in terms of the brain, it's really an intermingling of those two things. And so the genetics that our babies experience that guide their brain development, we can't really influence. They're
okay.
There.
And that would be what people call nature?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So that would be both the genetic code that we inherit from our parents, biological parents, and also epigenetic experience.
Yeah. And this was like mind-blowing to me to tie that in.
It is. That was one of the most explosive and exciting areas of research that sort of came out through my research career. And that's, still unraveling, right? We still have a lot of mysteries there. But we do know that babies do inherit certain experiences, especially in the stress system and emotional system, from genetic marks as well. So the experiences of people who came before us leave marks in our DNA that then
get passed down.
And then, so that's about 50% of what's shaping their brain.
Okay.
And the other 50% are experiences. And so we can have just an enormous influence on their brain development, mental health, and physical health by interacting with those experiences.
Okay. So nurture really matters. Like how we interact really matters. And how do you define nurture?
It's a great question. So, I think the dictionary definition is to, pay attention to the growth and development of someone or something. Mm-hmm. And my definition builds on that. And I really feel it's a both emotional and physical relationship with a baby, an intentional relationship where you bring your presence, you bring your curiosity, and you're really, really, noticing what's coming up for the baby and responding as best you can.
Okay. And if someone's listening to this, when we talk about these strategies in your book, are they limited only birth to 3, or are some of these things like things we can do forever with the relationships that we're in?
Yeah, great question. They are absolutely things we can do forever. The way it impacts the brain is different based on ages. So the 0 to 3 years range is when really the foundation of our emotional systems, our neurotransmitter systems, and all the parts of our brain and body that make up our mental health are formed. So really the foundation is being formed during those 3 years.
Okay.
Those areas get re-enter a place of plasticity, of able to be sort of reshaped again, highly in adolescence again.
Okay, so that's my house right now.
9 to 14 kind of range. And then again when we're parents.
Okay. And how long is that window of neuroplasticity when you become a parent?
So far, we know it's at least 2 years.
Okay.
At least it's overlapping with the infancy time.
Okay.
But the brain changes that happen then are they last a very, very, very long time. It seems like you have that sort of window that's essentially overlapping with that 0 to 3.
Yeah.
And then those changes can last as you go on as well. But even if we do, start practicing nurture outside of those windows,
right,
we're not necessarily acting on that, that time of opportunity for really, really quick brain reshape. But we can still act on that circuitry in another way, right? So we can always be building on that foundation and sort of, changing what's going on there, even if it's outside.
Okay, so if your kid had a rocky start for some reason, or you were in a bad place when you had them and had some mental health crisis yourself or something, you can still help the nurture wiring for both you and your child.
Yes, completely. And I think we know this more from like a psychology kind of standpoint, right? And people's stories. The neuroscience on that is still unraveling as well.
I mean, it's just such an exploding new, we get to see inside the brain in new ways every day because of technology, right?
Completely, yes. The imaging that's coming is incredible.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. I hope that the book and all of these kinds of questions kind of prompt some of the labs that are working on it to look at it further. But we absolutely know that, so many of us do have a rocky start.
Yeah.
They're so unsupported.
Right. I mean, I'll say my personal window into motherhood, I moved cross country when I was 36 weeks pregnant. And then I knew no one besides my spouse.
Yes. So much to,
So it was me and him and this brand new baby for the first time. And that's overwhelming. And there's a lot of needs for everybody.
Completely. I think we're just also at the beginning of sort of understanding that too, because a lot of mothers are now speaking up in a really wonderful way and saying, I have so many things that I need, right? And no one is giving it to me. So that's a pretty common experience, right? And even if we are supported to an extent, we still really need tons of nurturing as new parents, right? And so many of us do have a rocky start, and to just know it's absolutely never too late to do, to incorporate nurture into parenting. Yeah.
Fantastic. And a lot of the ways that you nurture parenting, I loved how you talked about when a baby has big feelings there was a whole process. Do you remember that process about the feel, name, or need? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really important sort of research area. I learned from Arietta Slade at Yale University. This is based on her work, and she calls it parental reflective functioning. And so reflective functioning also is another topic, but for parents, this is the way that they teach it. And so essentially our baby's doing a behavior, right? This happens all the time. They're throwing something, they're hitting something.
Yeah, just something, right? The spaghetti's on the floor or the ceiling or awake at 3 a.m. and you can't deal with it. Yeah.
Exactly. They're crying, they're whining, they're, something, right? Mm-hmm. And so often the, way that we've approached it in sort of what I would say low nurturing way is to just go at that behavior. You threw something, I don't like that. Stop. If you stop, I'll give you a reward. If you do it again, I'll give you, a punishment of some kind, right? And so so moving away from that, we can now know that inside of us and our babies, we have an internal world that's full of feelings, emotions, thoughts, sensations, and moving away from that other model, which is really a behaviorist model, which is there's a behavior I don't like, reward it or punish it. This is a way more sort of nuanced approach where we're really curious about that internal world of a baby and of a parent. And so when we see a behavior, we can think, I'm going to be curious for a second. Let's wonder.
Yeah.
What emotion might be underlying this behavior? And then what need might be underlying that emotion? And so let's pretend, our baby throws something as an example in an angry way. We can say, I'm wondering if you're feeling angry or frustrated right now, and what might you be needing? What is that emotion telling us that you're needing? And maybe that's, a little bit less stimulation. Maybe that's a hug.
Right.
Maybe that's, an explanation of sharing or whatever. Right. So that, I always orient parents to that. So thinking about, there's a behavior. Let's be curious. What's the emotion going on and what's the need going on? And if we meet that need, then, address it in a much more nurturing.
And is there an age where this is too young for a parent to think about? Or
I say no. I would start it very early. Start it with a newborn, and it's both for the baby to hear it a lot,
but a lot for the parent.
Yes, exactly. It's for us to practice because this is foreign for so many of us. It's a whole new approach.
Oh yeah. How many babies did you help take care of from the very beginning? I babysat a lot, but not newborns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I babysat a lot of cousins and stuff, and I didn't know any of this.
Exactly.
As a doula, I worked with a lot of parents, and it's lovely to see how babies respond, right? To this as well, and it's really regulating for parents too, which is really important. So it's good practice for us. The baby's going to start to understand more and more and more as they get older. Yeah. And it's really good for us because, your baby throws something, you might become reactive and say, oh, that behavior's so bad. I don't like that behavior. But if we can take a minute to pause and say, oh, they're so sad right now.
Yeah.
They're so devastated right now. That activates our empathy and really helps regulate us and help us show up for them in the way that we want to.
Right. And I think the key part of this is part of the myths that you're busting in your book as you talk about this is that babies are born full humans from the get-go, right? They're not a blank slate. There's all sorts of old, outdated ideas that get passed around still about development. And so one is that babies are wonderful. Just from the start, they're already thinking and feeling. We just aren't inside of them to know what it is.
Completely. I mean, right from birth.
That's so amazing to me.
Yeah. And the difference is amazing, right? So I attended a lot of births as a birth doula and prepared, so many parents for this. And you really see the difference when people are, kind of going through the old script of, here's the baby. Let's wrap
this
them
is a
up,
blob.
pass them around.
Yeah.
The mom of the person who gave birth is where's the baby? The whole family comes in and versus, and that can happen, of course, in time. But versus a family who's really incorporating the nurturing kind of principles, and they just have this lovely eye contact, connection, communication with the baby. Baby's already mimicking facial expressions, already taking them in.
Right. They're wired for this.
Absolutely. It's incredible to see. Yeah.
And so there's a big difference that we kind of touched on there too, is you mentioned low nurture and then we want to probably move towards high nurture, but that's not how, at least in North America, we're accustomed to. We're really a low nurture society, aren't we?
Really, really low nurture. Yeah. And it's reflected in, probably most of the medical kind of field that you're going to encounter, you know, throughout pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And so I really invite parents to try to bring nurturing professionals into their experience, right? If they can have a birth doula throughout their pregnancy or childbirth educator, a lactation expert, right? So the whole field.
I needed all of that support.
Yeah. We're really informed of, what babies are needing and what parents are. Yeah.
And so what are some myths that are really common for a low nurture society that you want to just shatter? We don't have to explain them all because I think they should read your book. But what are the most common myths that you hear that tense you up?
My gosh, I think it is still shocking because of the world I'm in now, it's shocking that the spoiling myth is still so
much.
It's wild. It's wild. The amount of places that it says you can't spoil a baby. It's impossible. It's impossible. Parents are still really hearing this from their doctor, from family members, from friends, from social media, it's still really, really out there. And it is completely shocking.
Because we really want to force independence in this low nurture society, right? Like that's the push. In a low nurture society, we are forcing independence way before a kid is ready. And I see that in this Birth to 3 book, but I also see it as I raise kids, right? That are much older. And I was like, just because everyone else is doing those things, like we don't have to do it that way at this exact age.
Completely. I think that's one of the biggest pieces that's missing from society, right? Is that connection, like interconnectedness of people, the way that we need to rely on each other and help each other. So many of us are really lonely, missing that part. And we can make a change for the next generation.
Is there another myth that you would like to shatter?
The spoiling one, and then sleep. I'm very passionate about sleep.
Oh, good. Tell me about that.
There's so many myths about infant sleep. I think the biggest one is, to be really general, around something like 4 or 6 months, that's when babies need to be in their own room, sleeping through the night, sleeping, exactly 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We have to, do all kinds of things to make that happen, right? That's
lots of things that feel uncomfortable for the parent, right?
Absolutely. And for the baby.
Yeah.
It's really, that one really gets me because it really makes parents feel like they're failing.
Yeah.
Or there's something wrong with their baby when everything is just going beautifully. And I hope that parents get that information prenatally as soon as possible to really know infant sleep. That is not what normal
infant sleep is such a random experience in my three walks down that path.
Yes, you have different experiences.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely. It is, along with some fertility journeys, infant sleep, I would say, is like one of the most unfair, variable, wild experiences. It's amazing how different every single baby is. And so, so much of my work and so much of the education that I do is helping parents understand what to expect and kind of being flexible too, because these really look different.
Absolutely. So as you work on parental flexibility, do you have any practices that can help a mom or dad lean into being able to nurture more? Because a lot of this journey is like, I find myself tensed up. And I remember this early on, especially with newborns, because you can't talk to them and you're just trying all these things and you feel lost and overwhelmed and also separated from like the rest of the world in this bubble.
Completely. I had a very similar experience as well. And it's a really lonely experience for so many of us, even if we do have people around sometimes.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's just so much that, I don't know, we just don't talk about what motherhood in that phase looks like besides, aren't they cute? or worse, they're asking about sleep. And you're like, I really don't want to talk about this. Like, I feel like a failure already, and it's not even something I can control.
Yes, absolutely. And so much focusing on like, what's not working versus, the times that are great too. Yeah. So I think to start out, to sort of just say, this low nurture culture we're in really is failing us as mothers and fathers and parents. It really, really is. It leaves us isolated. It leaves us, usually if we're the primary parent, with all of the mental load. How many diapers do I have in the house? What needs to be washed? What is going on, right?
Yeah.
Just endless amounts. And so, yes, I remember this one moment when my son was little. We went on a hike and we were in this beautiful forest. I had him in the carrier. I think my husband had him in the carrier. And then I was like, similar moment to what you said. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, my shoulders are up at my ears, all tense. I'm like, I'm not even holding my baby. I'm in the woods. Like, relax.
Right. Like all the things that used to relax me didn't feel very relaxing early on.
Completely. And it has to be so intentional. So intentional. Yeah. And I think that's one big piece for people is to be aware of their stress, because we can spend months or even years in this type of stress state without knowing.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like throughout a journey with 3 children. And adding that piece of emotional intelligence in for us is really, really vital, right? So just, the baseline of it is awareness, noticing that we're stressed at all. And then having some self-regulation tools that are easy, fast, and feel good that we can do throughout the day to manage it is very helpful. Yeah. I wish the answer was like, we could have.
I know, like magical unicorn smoothies but it's not. But part of what I loved about being able to label what the baby might be feeling and the baby's behavior was the awareness of how much we don't even talk about feelings. And so as a new mom, like I remember people asking how I was, but I didn't have like the words to share of like how I was feeling or what potentially my needs were. Because I only knew what the baby needed next because I was so in tune with them.
I only knew that I needed chocolate and coffee.
Like I remember one time I really needed Jell-O and then I heard the Jell-O lid open in a different room and I wasn't the one eating it and I was really mad. Like I have this core memory, my poor husband, the red Jell-O when I was nursing a baby. I just was saving it for after.
Hey. Yes. So when I discovered nonviolent communication, which I have included in my book, some of the practices, that was so helpful to me and so many of the people I worked with. And essentially it's these lists of feelings we have when our needs are met and feelings we have when our needs are not met. And so many of us, our vocabulary of emotions are...
Yeah, we know...
Sad, happy.
Yeah, I was going to say mad, sad, and glad are the ones, like...
Yes, and those are the default ones I have too, right? I've got like an emotion chart here beside me.
I've had an emotion wheel on my fridge. Like I've tried for years and it's still hard.
Yes. It's probably something
it's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with using these lists all the time. They really help. And so, when we're feeling a huge emotion, it's so helpful. Or if we've done a behavior that we're not happy with, right? The behavior, feelings, needs apply to us too.
Yeah.
We can take a minute to say, okay, I did this behavior I don't like. I yelled.
Yep.
I melted, I did something and then really look at those lists and say, okay, you know what? I am feeling lonely, isolated, sad, rejected, and then the other part that this resource provides is a list of needs.
Yeah.
And so often as mothers, there are so many needs.
So many.
And fathers,
right?
This is
whoever the primary caregiver in particular. That's my lived experience.
Completely. And I think the secondary caregiver too, right?
I'm sure.
Too. And then we can look at the needs and say, okay, like I probably need connection. Like I need to probably call my best friend and say, let's go get ice cream and just have fun and laugh. Right? We probably aren't doing that very much.
Yeah, not enough.
In the early years, and not enough. Absolutely. Or I need movement. I want to put on a video for 10 minutes and stretch my body. So there's so many things there. I created, I think, yes, it is still a free resource on my website. I have like a printout that can walk people through all of that. Cause that's so, so helpful, right? To, both be really curious and interested in our baby's internal world and also ours. And it's going to be the first time for many of us.
Totally. And I find that the more that I'm aware and conscious and kind to myself about my own behaviors and feelings and needs, the more I respond in a way that's nurturing to my own kids, right? Like I respond to myself nurturing, and then that naturally bubbles over in a much smoother fashion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we're really able to meet our needs, and that's hard because
I think we're always going to have some unmet needs, right? Like it's hard to.
Yes. Always.
Right.
Unless,
that would be unrealistic. No one should walk away thinking their needs are going to be 100% met all the time. It's kind of like a shifting puzzle.
Completely. You have new ones every day, maybe every hour. But when we can do, a okay job at it, right?
Right. Good enough.
Having that intention.
Yeah.
Good enough. we don't find ourselves in those extremely high levels of stress.
Right.
Flight or freeze, right? We can kind of stay in our window of tolerance. And if we do get up there, we can maybe notice it and try to get back in. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So when I find that I'm in my window of tolerance more and like able to give from the overflow of my self-nurturing reserves more, you had 4 amazing questions that were kind of based on Oprah, kind of based on, it's on your website as a download too. I actually referenced it already on a previous podcast episode because I was so excited about them. So can you tell us about your 4 questions about how to make connection with our kids?
Oh, I love these questions. Catherine Schlafer, she has a book out as well. She just created these questions based on conversations between Oprah and Toni Morris and Maya Angelou, and they were talking about their children. See the clips online.
Yeah. I think I've heard some of the sound bites. Yeah.
Yeah. They're very, very, very important. I think about them every day. So the first is, do you see me? And so many of us, right?
I mean, you get really busy. Yeah. Like if you're hearing these questions and then tensing up because you're like, ah.
Yes. I mean, they're important for us and they're important for our children as well, right? Like,
yeah, but however your body responds to these questions, just know like it's a baseline of questions. Like it's not a judgment on if you're a bad parent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they're probably things we want from people. And the next one is, do you care that I'm here? And so we always want to give our children, not always, but as best we can, yes to these, right? And I love starting this in the morning, right? I always have a moment with my son every morning. Am I enough for you, or do you need me to be better in some way? I think this is a big one. So many of us...
Especially, I'm going to just tag it as like a low nurture society side effect when we're so focused on production that sometimes being is not what we're going for.
Yes, we need to... we all want to be loved for exactly who we are.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to be looked at like, oh, I'd love you. I'd kind of like it if your hair looked better today. I kind of like it if you dress a little bit neater.
Yeah.
I'd like it if you have better grades. I'd like it if drop off were easier in the morning. Right?
Yeah. Like, or mom, I liked it if you made this meal all the time. Like the standard goes the other way when they start talking to you.
Exactly. And actually I do ask my son that often as well. I say like, how can I be a better mommy?
Yeah. I ask my kids that too. Like it's a good reflection because I'm not inside of their thoughts and feelings as much as I can assume that I am sometimes. And then I make really bad choices.
Yes. And to just be open to what they say, right?
Yep.
That they're feeling what they're feeling. And the last one is, can I tell that I'm special to you by the way that you look at me?
Yeah.
And it's so important to have those experiences, to know that you're someone's best beloved, you're, really, really unconditionally loved and accepted for all your feelings, all your emotions, regardless of the state you're in.
I love this. And while we nurture our kids, I know there's that magic window of infancy from birth to 3, but when we provide these experiences, especially in that window, we're changing how they're going to nurture, right?
Yes. This work is incredible. A lot of it was done by Frances Champagne at Columbia. I was a postdoc there and I saw her.
It's so hopeful.
It's amazing. Like she's shown the nurturing experiences in this window in infancy.
Yeah.
They cause epigenetic changes. So they're really changing a baby's DNA.
Yeah.
And estrogen receptors and oxytocin receptors. And that, increases the chances of them being a high nurturing parent and person.
That's so amazing to me.
It's amazing. And you think about the kind of longer link of the low nurturing.
Right.
For the past couple hundred years, at least, knowing that we can make such a big change, even into the genetics, influence the future is just so exciting and incredible.
Absolutely. Well, I think everyone who knows a child or has been a child should read The Nurture Revolution. So I want to go plug that one more time. And I have a question for you. With all of these practices and all that you're doing and parenting and just living life, how are you taking care of yourself? What's a simple self-care act that you have?
It changes for me a lot. Right now, I've been doing a little bit of plant medicine. I've been like harvesting some goldenrod from my area.
That's awesome.
And drying it and making teas. And that just helps me to like be outside, slow down, touch, have that sensory experience. And I'm doing it, in a really slow, deliberate kind of way, breathing, experiencing it. That is a big one for me right now. It's a seasonal one. And hiking is kind of my like core self-care for the past while. So making sure I get out into the forest. Yeah. At least a few times a week.
And do you do that alone or in community?
Usually in community. Yeah. Yeah. I do a little walk around my house on my own, but I have 2 standing dates, people during the week to have, because then you get all the benefits at once, right?
Right. Yeah. No, like it's an important point. Like I think that when our self-care only involves ourself and not community care, then we're missing an important part. So that's why I wanted to ask, because I assumed you weren't hiking alone for.
Yeah. And I love it to, I talked about that with my clients as well, like starting in pregnancy, right? Like you can do a walk in nature. That means you're having the exposure to nature, which is so good for your nervous system and the baby. You're moving and walking, another incredible thing for your brain and baby's brain. And then you're socializing and supporting another person, and they're supporting you. So I think it's one of the best.
And then how are you having fun as a family?
Yeah, that's a great question. This year, we've been doing lots of beach time this summer. Right? We took a lot of time off, and we got a canoe this year. So we've been paddling some rivers and having lots of fun doing that.
Have you seen really cool wildlife?
We saw like a gorgeous turtle the other day. We saw a fox. Yeah, that's another amazing thing about that, to really be slow. And
canoes are so quiet. I loved canoeing with my grandparents as a kid because you got to see things that would startle otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been looking for beavers, but we haven't seen them this year.
They're hard to spot. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Besides the book, you have a website that has some downloadable resources. Can you tell us about that, Greer?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is nurture-neuroscience.com. And I've got lots of free resources, including that one I mentioned about taking care of our emotions and needs, some audio recordings that go along with the book, and lots of fun things there.
Excellent. Thank you. And the 4 questions, if you want to print that out, that's on Greer's website too, as a download. So
I recommend that as like a phone screen. You can put it on your phone screen.
Oh, that's a good awareness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We all need more awareness around that small digital device.
Yeah, exactly. It could be a good reminder, like, pick this thing up right now.
Exactly. We need more. We need a little bit of buffer in that habit usually. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here on Earth at the same time. Like mathematically, like it's always mind-boggling to me that I get to meet these really cool humans and that we're actually alive at the same moment of time. And you are exactly the right mom for your son. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so lovely.
Thank you for listening. And you've always been exactly the right good enough parent for your kids. You matter. Your self-regulation matters. Your needs matter. Your emotions and feelings matter. Let's practice noticing and naming them and helping our kids be better humans while we learn how to be better humans too. Thanks for listening. Let's keep calm and mother on together. Please leave a rating and review wherever you listen to this podcast. Peace.